Hi, welcome back to another edition of Legal Quilts. It seems like we were just here. Oh, we were, just last week. Don't worry, after this we go back to the regular every other week schedule. We're just a little off because we got busy because the way Memorial Day fell. That's all there is to it, and we always kick off Scrap Summer on Memorial Day weekend. So today, we're sewing what I call the rings. It's really the arc. It's not a complete ring, but it's the arcs. And this is really simple. It's not really curved piecing. It's because the shape of the template creates the arc because of how it's turned, okay? Because of how, not turned, the size. It's narrower down here, wider up here, and so that's what creates the arc. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our basket of pieces here. Mix them all up here a little bit. And I took my own advice, and just when I had a minute or two this week, I cut some, and we were all good. So I have more than enough for what we need here. I wanted to do a lot so that I really would get differences instead of, winding up with some that look the same. So first you're going to take 5 pieces, just 1, 2, 3, 4. Give me another one here. I know, and now I'm picking through them. 5. There we go. Let's grab 5 randomly, okay? I didn't really randomly grab them, but it doesn't really matter. Just get them, make sure they're all facing the right way. You want the narrow section on the bottom, and you just lay them out, all 5. Let me move that so you can see a little bit better. Okay, and you just lay them out. And then you get your thread, your needle and thread. Now normally when I'm just hand sewing, I use white thread. But because this is all darks, I decided to go with gray thread. I don't like using black because I found I actually have trouble seeing the stitches on dark stuff with black. But gray is perfect. You can still see what you're stitching, but it kind of blends in better. And this is so simple. Take 2 pieces, lay them right sides together. See, right sides together. This is the other reason I like working with darks and, really obvious things. You can tell the right side from the back side. I don't like calling it the wrong side because that sounds judgmental. You're wrong. And I know of at least one quilter who sometimes uses the back if you need a light or something. Nobody says you can't use the back side of the fabric. So it's not wrong. It's just not the side we want facing the right side, the front side. Maybe we should say front side. And then you just sew, just like you normally do. Just hand sew. Keep your stitches kind of close together because you don't want, just in and out, put your needle in. It doesn't matter which side you start on because your knot is not going to show. So you don't have to hide that. I'm left-handed, so I work left to right. I go from here to here, but if you're right-handed, apparently you go from here to here. I really found this out when I was sewing my Y stitches on my butterflies. I'm like, that doesn't look like a Y, and I found out it's because I do this part first and then sew along because I'm left-handed. So I get to the top of the Y before the bottom of the Y. I don't know. It just is. But you want them kind of close together because remember, when you're hand sewing, the only thing that's holding the stitches together is the part when the thread goes through both layers. If they're too far apart, you have these big spaces where it's not held together. The stitches where you see the flat part on one side of the fabric or the other, see, it shows up better here. Let me see, you kind of can't see it because it's it's still, even though it's gray. The flat part here, that's not holding anything together. So you have to make sure it's only when it goes through. And I know I'm kind of belaboring this point, but that's because I taught Girl Scouts how to sew once. I said, don't do like just one long stitch or a couple long stitches, because then it won't hold together. So they did 4 long stitches along something that was about this long. And it's like, no, you have to make it, it's only where the thread goes through. And you don't want a whole bunch of thread on there, but I always grab way too much. In fact, when I did the one I showed you earlier, I had enough on my needle the first time that I could sew all 5 pieces together without having to add thread. So that's what you do. You just keep sewing it until the end. Okay. Now you're going to need to make, if you got the pattern, and I know some of you had trouble finding the pattern, but if you go back to the last video, in the comments you'll see links to where you can order you can download the pattern for free. Okay? From one of the quilt shops. If you're reading the directions, it says you make 24 of set 1 and 24 of set 2. First of all, that's for the entire quilt. We're only making 1 block. And the sets, it's just because if you read further along, you do different things with the 2 sets. But there's really no functional difference in how you sew the sets. So for making 1 block, we need 8 arcs or rings, 8 rings. Okay? And then you divide those 8 rings into 2 sets of 4. Just, split them up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you have 2 sets of 4. Next week, we're going to work on set 1. Again, they're the same thing. They're all going to look like this, all different fabrics. But this is it. You're just going to sew these arcs, rings, whatever you want to call them. You're going to sew 8 of these to make 1 block. Let me tell you, sewing these, like I said, portable, because you're going on a trip. Just grab enough that you need, that you think you're going to sew, and you need a needle and thread, and of course your scissors to cut your thread, some sort of thread cutter. But that's it, and they go together really fast, as you can see. I'm talking through sewing here. I'm still trying to get my stitches really close together. I mean, some people can probably sew them as close as a sewing machine. And yes, you can do this on your sewing machine. I'm not, because remember, scrap summer, portable, taking on trips. You cannot take your sewing machine on your trip. But, unless you have a portable sewing machine. So this whole thing is going to be hand sewn, all of it. Plus I like sewing curves by hand. So this is all you do. Just in and out, and when you get to the end, you just tie off your thread. And what I like to do, instead of trying to somehow, whoopsie, created a knot. Okay, there we go. Instead of tying it off, I like to run it under the last stitch a little bit. That's so it shows through. And then put your needle through that knot, and you've got through that loop, and you've got a nice little knot. And then you just clip it off. And there you go. Those 2 pieces are sewn together. Your sewn together. It's going to hold together. It's not split too much. I'm trying to open up the seam, and it's just not opening. Don't forget to use your 1/4 inch seam allowance. I might not have used that completely correctly. You can mark these with your seam allowance if you want to make it easier. One thing, and I'm going to say this, and you're not going to believe this. I haven't done it yet. I'm going to do it when I do all 8. Press all your seams to one side. Don't press them open, because if you press them open, let's see if I have a little more room here. There we go. If you press them open, when you're sewing the curves and everything, you're going to put more stress on that seam and you're more likely to rip it. So you just want your seams to be a little protected. Doesn't matter if you to the left or to the right. It doesn't matter. Just press them all one way. And yes, I actually said that. I will press mine. We're working on getting a pressing station set up in Legal Quilts Studio. Speaking of things being added to Legal Quilts Studio, look, this is a Singer Sew Handy. They really made these from about 1910 to the 1970s. This is one of the 1970s models, I can almost guarantee. We had this when I was a kid. All right? And it's literally, there's no battery, no bobbin under here. It uses a chain stitch instead of the lock stitch. And literally you just hang crank it while sewing. My sister had it, and now it's been passed on to me. It even still had the original needle that's probably been in there since 1975. I've taken that out and put it away someplace safe because we're going to need it to figure out needles for this thing. We're going to oil it up, get it all cleaned up and everything, and get it working again. This is not portable, though, for trips because you can see how it moves with that crank. First of all, you have to hold it down, and it's very jumpy. So this is not very efficient. You're basically going to sew something like this. You're going to sew these pieces on something like this, and maybe even not that much. But it's cute to have, and it's a new addition to the Legal Quilts Studio. So we're going to get that all cleaned up. Like I said, you need to make 8 of these. Next time we're going to work with the first set, so at least have 4 of these done. Okay? And that's it. It's a pretty short one this time because, again, we're just sewing 5 pieces together in an arc. That's all we're doing, okay? So that's it for this edition. I will see you in 2 weeks when we work on set 1 of these where we're really going to get into curves, okay? In the meantime, like, subscribe, comment. If you wouldn't say it in person, don't say it in the comments. Obviously, you got something like, didn't quite see how you did that. Could you explain that step a little more? No problem. People who posted said that link didn't work for the PDF pattern. More than happy to fix that. I mean, that was just like, here's the pattern and stuff. But if you say something like, you're doing it wrong, I wouldn't sew it that way. You're not me. This is how I sew things, okay? You got to find the technique that works for you, that's comfortable for you. You might want to do these on the sewing machine. That might be more comfortable. And then do the rest of it by hand. It's not wrong. There's no quilt police. Don't forget, if you want to support my work, you can buy stuff on the website, or you can buy from my Ko-fi. You can make donations through the Ko-fi. As always, there's no quilt police. Have fun quilting, and I'll see you next time.